Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rumcast. My name is John Gulla. Co-hosting the show with me is Will Hookinga, and together we produce this little podcast that talks about all things rum-related with the people who love and shape it. On today's episode, we get to talk about something really special and unique with a guy whose commitment to bringing amazing rums to the United States is just as special. The founder of Holmes Cay Rum himself and a seasoned veteran of the Rumcast, Mr. Eric Kaye. But before we jump into that, Will, I know we had a lot of fun and interesting feedback from the bottle episode that we just released, where we essentially fought with each other for 90 minutes straight. So I'm curious to hear about more on that.
I actually think people may have had more passionate takes on the bottle episode than actual takes about rum itself from any of the other episodes we've done. So I don't know if that's I don't know if that's a reflection on us or if we just tapped into something deep in the heart of the rum nerd, which is a preference for certain bottle designs. But yeah, we got a lot of great comments. I've really been keeping an eye on the YouTube comments. As we mentioned in that episode, we published that one to YouTube, the full video, so you could see all the bottles. We added in little graphics of the bottles and everything. So if you haven't checked that out yet, go ahead and check it out. And this episode will also be on YouTube, the full video of our interview with Eric and everything. It's something we're trying to do more of going forward, so let us know if you like it. And the best way to do that is to go to YouTube, which is linked in the show notes, and subscribe to the Rumcast there as well. But I wanted to quickly read some of my favorite reactions from listeners from the past episode about best bottle designs, in which, as you said, we spent most of the episode arguing vigorously with one another about our individual preferences. So this comment from Chicagoan really stood out to me. Chicagoan writes, "Man, nothing jankier than a screw cap. I feel like Will is picking old 90s website design inspired bottles. Liking the old Nissan bottles over the beautiful new designs is another one." That actually might be Barbancourt that they meant to say, actually. Yeah. Just loving that 90s aesthetic. Habitation Vellier is money, if only for the labels, though, and the flag series are fire. I feel like John won the cheap stuff and Will the top end, which... That's the end of the comment, but the last sentence was hilarious because I feel like I'm typically the one who has a soft spot for the cheap, the cheap end stuff, whereas you're more particular about the higher end bottles. And Chicagoan just had the opposite preference. But I actually, when I saw this, I turned to my wife and I was like, "This person nailed it. I love old 90s website looking stuff because I was born in 88, so I grew up with that era of the internet. I think we got the internet in my house in like 1995, maybe. Yeah. And I was building websites on Angel Fire and platforms like that in the late 90s and early 2000s. So Obviously I know that stuff doesn't look good, but I love it. It just it strikes a chord somewhere deep in my heart. So I think Chicagoan nailed it on that. We also had Pizza Zombie wrote in and said, "As a graphic designer, this is driving me nuts. My opinion swings widely between Will's and John's for each bottle, to each their own indeed." Robert Flaxman wrote in and said, "I agree with a lot of Will's preferences, including maps, pictures of stills, and embossed bottles, but I really can't ride with him on Providence," which we got a lot of comments on that in the Discord as well. I actually haven't heard a single person write in on any platform and say, "I agree with your Providence pick." It's been universal dislike of my Providence pick. So I truly must be alone on that island, which I'm fine with. It doesn't make me like it less, but I feel like there wasn't a declarative winner when assessing these comments, and we weren't really going for that.
No,
but
it wasn't a competition in that way. You're just wrong. That's all there is. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I feel like people kind of gave us equal credit. So it was great, and there's many more that I could read on here. Also, Peter Christensen pointed out something that I had not seen before. An Easter egg on the Grander bottles is the D heart, and it's a heart emoji embossed on the bottom of the bottles, which Grander was founded by Dan D. Hart. Yeah. So it's like the letter D and then a heart. And I've never noticed that on the bottles before. So
I hadn't seen that either.
I'm surprised that you had never noticed that. So
no, I do love those bottles though.
Anyway, just great reactions all around. Thanks to everyone who listened to that episode. And I don't, John, did you have any reactions that jumped out to you? Did you have any did you change your mind on anything once you started seeing the reactions from people?
No, shit. Definitely reactions from people are not going to change my mind. I know I'm alone in the Habitation Velier series, the one that you love, with the stills on it. And I get it. I get the appreciation for the stills, and I actually think it's unique, right? You don't see that anywhere else, really, for the most part. And so from that perspective, I totally understand and appreciate how many people love it. Aesthetically, though, I don't know. It's not for me, right? I guess is what we would say. But maybe that's the island I'm alone on, Will, to quote you. So
you know what I think I've discovered a subtle way of flipping the "it's not for me" saying in a kind of a nicer way.
It's for me say, not.
It's for someone else.
Gotcha.
I actually can't tell if that sounds more or less condescending than it's not for me.
I think it might be more.
It's a nice one to throw out there sometimes, though. Anyway, we also, quickly, I wanted to point out, we got a great email from James, who I believe is in Europe. My apologies, James, for not remembering specifically where in the world you're writing in from. But James pointed out, he loved the episode, but said, you made a 1 hour, 44-minute podcast about bottles and failed to mention one elephant of a topic that should be at the front and center of every single company producing rum and customer who purchases rum.
Okay.
The environment. And
yeah.
This is a great point from James, and I think this is something that was on the outskirts of both of our minds as we planned the episode, but we weren't entirely sure how. First of all, I constantly see stuff about brands that are supposedly innovating in terms of sustainable packaging and things like that, but it's always hard for me to tell how much of that is genuinely moving the needle and how much of it is PR, greenwashing type stuff.
Yep. And
it kind of it makes me feel like I don't know what to highlight, which this is really a poor excuse because, this is what we do. I think in retrospect, what would have been a good thing to do would have been to have an additional category where we highlighted cool eco-friendly bottles. But James included some really great articles that I will link to in the show notes for this episode, and probably go back and link to in the show notes of that episode as well. But there was a few things that I learned, and one of which I was kind of aware of, which is that one of the big ways that brands can make an impact is by reducing the weight of their bottles, because glass manufacturing is a big source of emissions and everything. So if you can put a dent in that, maybe one small person doing it isn't going to make a big difference, but a bunch of producers doing it will. And I was looking at an article that James shared, and this was something I hadn't thought about before, but what actually influences the weight of glass bottles? And it highlighted 5 things that I'll read here because they were surprising to me. Okay. It says, square bottles are heavier than round bottles. Bottles with embossing are heavier than no embossing. That one really actually kind of broke my heart because as we mentioned in the episode, I kind of discovered the embossed bottles is something that I have a preference to aesthetically. So apparently they make the bottles heavier. Bottles with punt marks, which that's that little indentation on the bottom of the bottle, that you see in not only spirits but wine as well. That makes bottles heavier than not having it. Decorative features like ribbing or indentations also make it heavier. And there are a few other things. I'll link to this, like I said. But anyway, I do think it's great food for thought. There's a really interesting Rum Porter article, actually, that specifically focuses on this within rum and some interesting things in terms of sustainability. There's a program called Eco Spirits that is doing this thing in bars where rather than bars just getting, a case of a bunch of bottles, they will get what is essentially like a 4.5 liter jumbo container. It's like a big glass bottle container.
Okay.
And they can then either dispense that liquid into a bottle that they reuse that has the brand and the label and everything, or they can put out the smaller bottles on the back bar for decoration essentially and use the large container for dispensing it into drinks, and then they can send that container back and get it refilled with the same spirit. So that's a really interesting application to think through from a bar standpoint. Obviously, it'd be a little different on the individual home bar standpoint. But when I read that, I was like, that really makes sense. I mean, if they can figure out the logistics of that and make it affordable and convenient for bars, that's something that could have a really big impact. So anyway, I won't pretend to be an expert on this, but I will link to some of these articles that I found interesting that James enlightened us on. And something I'm trying to inform myself better on going forward.
We should go ahead and just do the category. So
yeah,
we should both pick one and do it. I don't know, maybe at the end of this episode, maybe next.
Yeah, for sure. Let's pencil it in for next episode so we can have some time to really assess the options, because I feel like we'll have to do some fact checking. And James was also mentioning there's like a wine YouTube channel where the reviewer will weigh each bottle to comment on like the weight of the glass. And I was like, I hadn't ever even thought about weighing a bottle at home, so I might have to go through my shelves and start weighing stuff. And I have noticed, I think one bottle that I've remarked on how surprisingly light it felt in my hand was the ninefold bottle, actually, which is a great looking bottle. And it has all these indentations and stuff. But when the first time I picked it up, I remember I was like, this feels like a feather. Like, it was like, sometimes you pick up something that you're just not expecting to be as light as it is. I had that. So anyway, we will,
by the elves,
we'll do some homework, and we'll do a little part 2 to tag on to a future episode highlighting some of the best eco-friendly bottles out there. So thank you, James, for the kind words about the episode, but also the push in the right direction. We appreciate it.
All right, so transitioning back into what this episode is today, I think we can both agree we like the bottle for this new release that we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, we do.
I can't think of anything that's been quite this different in rum for a while now. And so, when we heard about this happening, we had to go find Eric and bring him on to talk about it. This is, of course, the Holmes Cay Infinity Cask that is being released not too long after this podcast hits the airwaves, I think. So, Will, I know we mentioned a few things in there. Anything that stood out to you in terms of what we wanted to find out about?
Yeah, well, I think just in case anyone is unfamiliar with this release, I know it's kind of made some waves on rum social media circles because it's so distinctive. And also infinity casks are something that we have discussed in a recent episode with Ian Hoyles from the Main Rum Company, but also the very first episode we ever did about the Main Rum Company with Karsten Vleerboom. That was when he first brought up this notion of infinity casks. That was the first time either of us had ever heard about it. And I think the first time that a lot of people out there had learned about it, and that was about 2 years ago. So essentially what an infinity cask is, just to review quickly, is at Main Rum, they typically will retain a sample of like every cask I think that they ever have in there. Even, before they sell it, they'll retain a sample, and they don't hold on to the samples forever. And a sample is like a full-size bottle. And so I think when it comes time to sort of make room, clear out some of the samples, they started pouring the bottles into casks and creating essentially their version of a rum infinity bottle like you would do at home, except with exceedingly rare special rums and going into a cask, that creating a sort of super blend that would then further age. And the first one they did, well, I don't know if this, the oldest one that they had for sale, they started working on in, I believe, 2003. And the rum ended up aging for 20 years. Eric bought it, I think, when it was about 19 years old, but it contained rums that were distilled all the way back in 1974, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. And that's essentially what became this Infinity Cask Holmes Cay release. And I don't think we've done too many episodes over the years where it's just an episode highlighting a particular release. We're not really in the business of just trying to hype up every new thing that comes out. And I know people have strong feelings about this because the release itself, there's two versions of this release, and we talk a lot about this with Eric, so I won't try to talk over what we cover in the interview, but it's a $1,500 suggested retail price release. Like, this is this is not your everyday rum purchase. I have never spent that much on a bottle of rum, and likely will never spend that much on a bottle of rum.
Most people, right?
Yeah, exactly. But they're also releasing 200 milliliter bottle versions of this, a select number that will, I think the suggested retail price is $300. So trying to make it a little bit more accessible for people who like just want to try the rum and don't care as much about the big fancy box and all that good stuff. But anyway, I think when there's a release that is this unique, it's worth diving into deeper on. We tried to do the same thing with the Appleton 17-year legend release. Unfortunately, the fine folks at Campari never answered our emails, so that didn't happen. But we did our own little mini episode about that. So I think anytime there's kind of one of these releases in the rum world that really grabs attention, and it's nice to kind of get the story behind the bottle and everything. And I mean, this rum, we get a little more into the specs, but this is Demerara rums from the 70s, 80s, 90s. It's rums from closed distilleries, including Caroni, Gardel, which is an agricole distillery on Guadeloupe. There's more. There's a bunch. We'll link in the show notes to all the components, but this is just one of those releases that when we look back on this year in rum, like what were the big releases, this is one that will bubble to the top. So it was great to get a story behind it all.
And like you said, it's just not often that you have something that makes so much waves in the rum community. So, or is this expensive, like you said, in terms of a premium product? And those people who are considering it, I think, we're trying to provide more information directly from Eric himself in terms of what was the idea behind this, what is it, and really giving that perspective of not only his, but ours on finding out more about the bottle and what's in it so that you can make a more educated decision with it.
Well, and also part of what I was curious about and wanted to talk to Eric more about, Holmes Cay has almost kind of grown up alongside the Rumcast.
Yeah.
We both started at a really similar time. Eric was one of the first people we ever interviewed. Mm-hmm. And so getting to watch that brand grow and everything. But even I knew Eric was interested, was going to get one of these Infinity Casks. I didn't really know how much they would cost or anything like that. And even when I saw what the release was and the lengths he was going, he and Mara creating this box and a book that comes with it and all this stuff, and it was $1,500, I was like, holy shit, that is, I never anticipated Holmes Cay doing this kind of release. So I was really interested in just getting, what does push you to do this kind of release? Is this something you're looking to do more of going forward? Because when I see releases that are done like this, usually you associate them with much bigger brands, or I do anyway. Maybe it is more common with some of the
companies. Yeah,
it might be more common with some of the European IBs that we don't have as much access to over here. But so it was just kind of a like, wow. So yeah, I was just curious to learn more about their perspective on it and everything. And it was a great conversation. Always great to catch up with Eric. So I'm excited for people to hear it. And John and we also got samples of the rum, and we're able to share some of our thoughts on what it tastes like. So if you're curious about that, you'll definitely get those details as well.
Yeah, well, let's head on over to it.
All right.
All right, we are here with Rumcast veteran, maybe the Rumcast record holder at this point for
might have the belt.
Guest. Yeah, you have the belt, Eric.
I am the Alec Baldwin of the Rumcast.
Please don't accidentally shoot either of us.
I will not shoot you.
Thank you. CEO of Windy Side Spirits and founder of Holmes Cay Rum, Mr. Eric Kaye. Eric, welcome back to the show.
It's good to be back, Dave. No, sorry. John,
got the radio mic and everything. That's actually how you know that Eric is a Rumcast veteran, because he showed up with a mic that you can see on camera. So it's he's got the rich bass tones coming through. It's wonderful.
It's for the Patreon crew. Well, I figured since I spent 25 years, in the recording studio, it wouldn't behoove me to do a Zoom or a podcast just on my computer speaker anymore. So I went to the rusty mic cabinet and pulled out a nice AT 4050, I think this is. 4033.
Very nice. Yeah, after all your previous interviews ended, John and I would just kind of look at each other and be like, can you believe that he used a computer mic?
Yeah. What's
Right?
going on
He's
with
supposed
that?
to be in the music business.
Yeah. Well, that's why I, washed out and ended up in rum.
You you kept trying to record stuff exclusively on computer mics and couldn't figure out why it was coming back the way it did.
It might make a comeback. We'll see.
Yes.
All right. Well, Eric, when we heard that you were bringing the Infinity Cask from Main Rum, that there was going to be no doubt we wanted to get you on here to talk about it. And maybe it's a good place to start off with asking the most basic question that sets us up, which is, where did this idea come from? And also, like, given how radically different this is than pretty much anything else out there, when did you realize you were actually going to be able to make this a thing?
Great question. This whole process started almost 2 years ago now. It took almost a full 2 years to bring this out. Obviously, it came from the Main Rum in Liverpool, and they were the ones who made this barrel 20 years ago and had been sitting on it for about 19 years at the time when Ian, who has been on your show at least once, mentioned that they had a couple of these barrels and there were three of them and they were gonna send us a sample of one if we wanted it. And
If
at
you
that
wanted
point,
it.
yeah, if it wasn't.
Was it
And
like,
Neil,
did they give you the hard sell? Was it like, we got one of them left right now, you better jump
no,
on this?
we're giving you, the first choice. This is the oldest one, and
All right.
I think the most expensive one. And I said,
I hope it's the most expensive one.
and I said, trying to be cool, let me taste it. Because no knock on them, but sometimes you have barrels that are 30, 40 years old and they've either lost too much ABV because up in the north you lose ABV. When we put out the 20-year Barbados pot still Foursquare a couple of years ago, it came down to about 51%, I think. And I brought it down to Barbados and let Richard taste it because he hadn't seen the rum in 20 years. And his comment, took a sip, a little quiet, and said, "Yeah, it lost a bit of ABV over the years. Not good, not bad, just yeah." So that's what happens when you leave a barrel a long time up there. You lose ABV up in Liverpool. But thankfully, this was still up there at 58 because it had a lot of real high proof stuff that went in 20 years ago or longer. And the next reaction after they sent the sample was, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Am I going to have to mortgage my house for it?" And the answer was yes. Not literally, but it was by far the most expensive barrel we'd ever purchased or even thought of purchasing. But
Wow.
it was so unique that we had to bring this to the world. And the one thing we knew right off the bat was we were going to wait until November 03 to bottle it because that was when it had been, or November 23, because that was when it had been a full 20 years
Right.
since it had been sealed. And I didn't want to deal with 19 years and 8 months
Yeah.
Right.
so we got it probably around July of last year and sat on it for a few months, just waiting for it to be ready.
Somehow managed to not drink it all yourself, right?
Yes.
Sitting there. Yeah.
Unfortunately, in the probably 6 to 8 months that it took us to bottle it, we managed to lose a lot more of it due to the angels. End result being we had less of it available than we thought we would. So it got even more expensive.
I thought so. I met up with Mike Hooker, who works for you and was doing a tasting in town a few weeks back, and he shared that bit of news with me, the kind of unexpected angel share. And my first thought, I didn't think to ask Mike at the time, but so it was in Liverpool for all these years, and it's not like it was. I mean, it's losing some to evaporation, but it sounded like the volume that it lost was just unexpectedly large once you brought it to New York. Was that just a feature of the environment? Like, why was
Yeah.
it so suddenly like, oh shit?
Well, where we age is a very different climate than Liverpool.
Sure.
We age upstate New York on Lake Erie, where there's huge temperature swings. In the summer,
Yeah.
it gets to be 98 degrees. In the winter, it gets to be minus 10 or 20, and those
Yeah.
barrels sweat and expand and contract. And we get a much higher angel share loss up there than you would in Liverpool or even Kentucky, where a pretty more constant climate. I guess privateer would be the most similar.
Yeah.
But even they don't get the extremes being closer to the coast. But yeah, somebody should do a study on Lake Great Lake aging,
Lake effect aging,
the
like
lake
lake effect
effect aging.
snow. Yeah. Yeah.
But yes, so the short story is, it came from the Main Rum Company. I was told they put down three of these barrels. One of them went to last drop. I don't know who has the third, but they were all different, all one of a kind, never to be seen again or before. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so we
And
bit the bullet.
okay. And at that point, did they like give you like a folder full of information with this also of like all of the stuff, or how did they even discuss that with you to start with?
Well, I obviously needed to know what was in it, and
Right.
there was a first sheet which was a little bare bones, and then I'm like, we got to do better. If this is going to be $8 gazillion, we need to know really what's in it. Which actually sent Karsten back into the old records of Skier and Main Rum, and they were really doing the research of the spreadsheets of all these old samples from 1976.
By
Uh,
candlelight, obviously.
yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And they came up with a real comprehensive, this is exactly what's in this. The five lost distilleries, the 13 altogether. Um, if you were to make an all-star cask of who's who, I think it's got just about everybody in there. I mean, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think we'll talk through some of the components during the intro. But one thing I was interested in is this is obviously a very different release from anything you guys have done, not only in terms of contents, but also in packaging and cost. This is like the highest tier of type of rare rum you can release in terms of expense. And I know there are some out there that get into, the, five figures and stuff like that. But this is a very hefty rum. When you were first looking at this and sort of doing the mental calculations of everything of like what this bottle would cost, was there any part of you that was like, can we put something out that's going to cost this much? Like, because I mean, it's such a huge leap. Did you have any feelings like that, or did you know right away, like, it doesn't matter how much it's going to cost, like, we're going to be able to do this?
Is it a gambit? Does it qualify as a gambit at this
Oh,
point?
it's a 100% gambit. It's a big gambit. We've never sold anything remotely that expensive, and very few companies have that aren't Lalique or super fancy. But the rarity of this, I mean, yes, the fancy packaging and the book and all of these things make it significantly more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it's only 100 bottles is what really makes it expensive, and
Yeah.
what gave us the most trouble in coming up with the packaging. We had a hard time finding a vendor that would even make 100 boxes for us. They're like, it's not
Mm.
worth our time unless you're doing 500 or 1,000, and most luxury rums like that are
Right.
500 bottles or 1,000 bottles, but
Right. So
100.
your per unit cost goes up then. Yeah.
Yeah, and the vendors, we were getting quoted, oh yeah, $250 a box, and I'm like, we got to do better. And then we worked with a vendor that we thought was great. We went down the road, and then they disappeared. Um, or sent the wrong paper and refused to use the paper we had designed. I say we, but it was largely Mara, and our designer in Argentina really put that box together.
Hmm.
They spent many, many sleepless months designing this thing and then finding somebody who could execute the packaging. I mean, the packaging is almost more of a story and more of the work than the rum itself. The rum is expensive because of the rarity, but the
Mm-hmm.
packaging and putting together 100 luxury boxes is a nightmare project with the special um, copper metallic, label stick
Yeah.
on and the special cork. 100 custom corks is nobody would do that. So we had to find somebody on Etsy who would hand engrave the corks and
Wow.
apply the
Mm.
metallic cork top, which is gorgeous, which led to a whole other story. But I mean, the amount of individual steps required to put this box out, in retrospect, we may have just, put it out. But it was so rare, so unusual that much of this can, Yeah.
Ooh, there we go.
Ooh, there we go.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh.
I like it. It like blurred some of the inside of it, so it's like it's
Right.
too hot for TV, kind of.
And the book is right there.
Rum gone
Okay.
wild.
Slides out.
That
Oh,
is
little
nice.
drawer.
Yeah. It's like a secretary desk mixed with a triptych. It's really amazing.
It's
Are there secret compartments?
well, you have to buy a bottle to find out.
I love how you came really up on the mic for that one too. That was
There's a Wonka ticket in there.
nice.
Ooh. I
Nice.
did kind of flip through the book searching for if there were any Easter eggs in it. I don't think I located any, but I'll give it a closer analysis.
Yeah, no Easter eggs there.
Okay. That's exactly what one might say if there was a really good Easter egg.
I also saw the wheel turning there. It was like, that's a good idea.
We wanted to come up with a packaging that really gave it the respect I thought it deserved. That said, we did a little poll saying, what would people want? And a significant number of people didn't care about the packaging and just wanted to drink it, and a 200 ml would be fine. So the original plan was to do 100 bottles with the fancy box, and then whatever was left over, which we calculated around 150, 200 bottles, we would release at 200 milliliters. So everybody could get them at a cheaper price. And when we finally came to bottle it, which was a few months after November, because we couldn't get the bottles and we couldn't get everything, the custom bottles and the custom corks. And by the time we got everything and were ready to bottle, it was February. And we had lost significantly more than we expected to. So we only ended up with 64 bottles at 200 mil in total, of which about 8 are going to be used for samples to, so you guys can taste it and the like. And then we'll have 54 of those up for sale. And people posted, hey, if I'm doing the math right, it's cheaper to get, 3.5 200s than to buy the whole bottle. And they're absolutely right. And that's twofold. One, it's not like we're making massive bucks on the expensive one, but the packaging is really expensive.
Yeah.
And you got to remember that this all factors into a 3-tier system. So, for example, if you see something in the store that costs $1,000, the person who made it is selling it to a distributor for $500. The distributor sells it to the store for $750. The store sells it for $1,000.
Yeah.
There's layers of markup.
Yeah. So when you see a box that costs $150, that's another $300 on the price. So the 200 doesn't have the fancy, but it has a nice little cardboard box, totally acceptable. Doesn't have the fancy cork and the fancy metallic infinity symbol.
Right.
But it's for those people who really want to drink it, who really want to experience it. I wish, Harewood House did that with their 17, the rums from the 1700s. You had to buy a $30,000 bottle if you wanted one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I kind of put myself in that latter group of I can the box that you guys did, which I haven't seen in person, but you were showing to John and I earlier. It looks amazing, but for me, I'm always like, if I can get something cheaper without the fancy version of the packaging, sign me up for that, right?
And I'm totally different, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If money was no object for me, this is not a problem. I'm buying that full one because I want to display that in the middle of a room 360 and show everybody.
Spinning glass case.
Yes.
Thankfully, we were able to do that and get the full size bottle for the guys who really want to say this is it, and the others who just want to drink it and try it.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I want to drink it, but I want to show that shit off too. It's amazing.
Had we more of it, we would have maybe included a little 50 mil along with the 700, but we didn't think of that, and we didn't have enough rum.
You could do the little mini versions for liquor stores to just put behind the counter, with all the little shooters and stuff. I think I was trying to compare this to has there been another release like this in rum in the past few years, and there wasn't really anything that came to mind which speaks to how unique this is. But I think the closest thing I could think of, and I feel like this is even more of like a nerdy specialized version, but I was thinking back to the Appleton 17 release and how much like interest and excitement there was for that. And again, it's different. It's not apples to apples, no pun intended, because that was, had the connection to the Mai Tai and all the lore that went behind it and everything. It was also a cheaper price point. It was a significantly higher amount of bottles too. But when that came out, there were two reactions I saw. There was one, people are just like completely excited, and then there's also a group of people that are just like completely turned off by the high price, like the rollout of it, the exclusivity and everything. And I feel like definitely haven't seen as much of the negativity for this release as there was for that one, which Appleton is like an extremely high profile brand. But I have talked to some people and seen, here and there on places, and obviously you're always going to see some negativity on the internet, but there's certainly a group of people that are just like, John's shocked.
What?
Like there's always going to be a group of people who are just like, this is like, we're getting into bourbon territory with these like sky high prices. Did you like, how do you handle that kind of criticism that people have with something like this?
Sure, and it's a total valid criticism for some people. The Ray 17, the legend. I mean, it's a great rum. They could make more of it if they wanted to.
Right.
They could easily ramp up and make a lot of that. So that maybe was something with this. I mean, this. First of all, I'd say the closest parallels would be something like the Black Tot Master or the Velier really old Royal Navy. But again, those are all much younger rums.
Maybe Last Consignment?
Last Consignment.
Yeah.
Again, it was a young blend. They put those into flagons and they stopped aging. So those Last Consignment rums are less than 10 years old. The youngest rums are 20 years old, and we've got rums from 1976 in there. This is 47-year-old rums. I would say the closest would be more like the Appleton 50 blends. I don't think I've seen anything this varied, this old.
Yeah.
And this defunct.
Defunct.
This is truly one of a kind. And the price, and I'm sure people are going to drink it and they'll say, yeah, it's good, but it's not worth, it's not worth that. And to them, they're right. If you're buying based on value per dollar, I would drink Dourly's 12 all day long at $20 a bottle. You can't beat that value. Is it worth it? Yes, when you factor in that it really is a one-of-a-kind rum, that this is it. There's 100 bottles, and this blend will never exist again.
Right. And it's really the first of its kind that I can think of. Again, I don't want to categorically say this has never, ever in the history of man ever been done, but to my knowledge, at least, I can't think of anything else like it.
And I don't know if I should say this, but the Last Drop one did come out in Europe with a little younger rums at double the price.
Oh, right. Really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that one's selling for about $3,000 a bottle.
Wow.
So I don't think we were out of line. If anything, we maybe underpriced it.
Did you try the other samples or
No,
the other casks, or did you just get this one and be like, I don't even need to see the other one? Okay,
this is what you were offered.
Okay, I gotcha.
I think they knew exactly who they were going to offer them to, and I'm just very grateful that we were one of the ones that were entrusted. I mean, it really is. Who can you entrust with this barrel? I mean, the mark on it is IWS, which I say stands for Infinity Windy Side Spirits, but really stands for Ian W. Smith, who is
right.
The long-term head of Main Rum Company, and this is his baby. So you don't necessarily want it to come out with a screw cap. No offense, I know you like screw caps, but it's a momentous rum. It needs a momentous packaging. It needs to. I think it's a rum worthy of respect. Not that rums aren't, but we were very grateful that they entrusted us with this baby.
I was gonna say, because this is an interesting release in that it has all these old distilleries, some of which no longer exist, all this prestige behind it. But it also has Main Rum's fingerprints on it in a way, to an extent, that a lot of their other rums don't have. Not to say they don't do things with other rums, because we've talked to Ian about that, we've talked to Carson about that, things they do. But for a lot of their rums, it's kind of like they're shepherding it, right? With this one, it's like they blended it. It was sort of their little mad science experiment, informed, obviously, not just going crazy dumping whatever into it. But did they have any preferences in terms of like how because sometimes distilleries don't want their name put in there. Did they have any preferences in terms of just how you guys marketed this, or like what you played as their role in it? Because in the book and everything, I'd imagine they were all game for it, because like I think Ian Hoyles wrote part of what's in the book. So what did that kind of look like?
This was the first rum that we've ever released that says product of the UK on the bottle.
Interesting.
I mean, this really is a product of the UK, and it was very much a Main Rum rum.
Yeah.
It was not a product of these distilleries. It was a blend they created. We very much worked with them on the book, on everything. That letter of attestation from Ian, which takes up the first 5 or 6 pages, just really detailing what's in there. I didn't want to say this was our rum, because we were really the shepherds. It was their rum. They made it. They're not a brand. We're thankful that they let us put this out.
Yeah, here's the page, the letter of attestation for anyone looking at the video, and you can see it gets into the components and everything, which we should probably talk about those as well.
Yeah.
We've kind of hinted at them. Or John, did you have something you wanted to get in?
No, only that, and I think we kind of hit on it a little bit, but so it just seems like with your other releases, there's a lot of decision points that you make along the way that are going to lead to where it's going to be when it ends up on the shelf. With this one, it almost feels like your only decision was like, do we do it or not, right? I mean, the rest of it was like, it's here for us. Take it or leave it.
The decision was, how do we package it?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
Right.
that was where the struggle and the heartache and the endless hours, lost shipments, and
So I'm going to give the high level. I'm not going to list off every single thing that's in it, but I'm going to give the high level, which is 74% Guyana rums. That includes some very, very old Port Mourants, including a 1976, as you mentioned, plus a bunch of other marks from a bunch of other different stills, other Port Mourant marks. There's all kinds of stuff in there. 15% Jamaica from Hampden, Long Pond, and Clarendon. And what I was kind of looking at the marks that were in there, nothing crazy high ester. There's no like Diamond H or anything. I think the highest is El Rock from Hampton, which is about 300 to 400 ester wise. Then you have 5% Guadeloupe. And this is where the other very, very, very old rum, the 47-year Gardel from 1976, which is one of the closed distilleries. And then you've also got, there's a variety of Gardels that are in there, but that's the oldest one. Then you've got some Montebello, you've got some Poisson, which that is the maker of Père Labat. Then you have 3% Trinidad, which is all Caroni, I believe.
it is.
Then 1% Barbados, which is Word, West Indies Rum Distillery Pot Still, 1% Venezuela, Pampero, Column Still, and 1% Brazil, which is from Apri, Cane Juice, Column Still, which, by the way, we've been talking about Apri rums recently because a number of IBs have been releasing stuff from them. I didn't realize that they just quit making rum like within the last 2 years until I read that in this little Infinity book. I was like,
now
whoa.
they make soy vinegar and rice vinegar.
What a bummer.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing about the Apri that's been released out to the bottlers, I think it's all listed as 2012 or something, but that shipment, that was a giant blend that got sent over, and the majority of that 25,000 liter truck was like 20-year-old rum.
Wow.
And they had to go with the youngest rum in the blend because they trust it. So even though it says, the Ypres is 12
year or whatever,
it's largely a much older rum, which is one of the reasons it tastes so good.
I like those rums.
It's much older than it. I give everybody who's bottled it and the Main Rum and Skier credit for calling it the youngest rum in the blend, even though it's much older.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about just what this rum tastes like, which obviously is subjective and we all have different experiences of it. But like you mentioned, we did get some sample bottles shipped. By the way, it was like a sample bottle. I don't want people to think that Eric sent us free entire 200 ml bottles. We weren't that
of
lucky,
the 54
but still
left in existence. Right.
Yeah. We
And
weren't
plane
going to
tickets
hoard.
to Guyana.
We weren't going to hoard that much of this precious
We're
rum.
cool, but we're not that cool. Yeah.
No, this was a very generous sample to send out to anybody. Something that costs this much and is this rare, but. Eric, like what comes, because John and I we hadn't talked about our reflections on this rum until we hopped on before you joined the call, and I just started tasting it last night, and then I saved a little bit to visit again as we were doing this interview. What stands out to you from this blend? Like if you're gonna try to compare it to something for someone who hasn't had it or might not get the chance to have it, what are like the comparison points?
Gosh, obviously there's a strong Guyana influence.
Yes.
Yep.
It's got all 4 of the heritage stills in there. It's got the single wooden pot, the double wooden pot, the wooden coffee, and the Versailles still. So,
That's a grand slam.
yeah, KFM is
The Guyana
a great
Grand
old
Slam.
mark.
Guyana Grand Slam.
It really is the Guyana Grand Slam. I don't even know if El Dorado uses all 4. Caroni, and in addition to Caroni, it's got another mark that was made at that not Providence Plantation.
It's called the Providence Mark.
Yeah, it is
right?
Providence. So the Providence estate was a sugar estate that grew sugar, and they would make their own, rum mark using their sugar at the Caroni distillery or Caroni. So there's 2 separate different Caroni marks on there. The Providence one, I don't think any of that has come out via Velier or any of the other bottlers. I've never even seen the Providence mark.
I was unfamiliar with it as well, yeah. But like as you said in the book, it says distilled on a column still at Caroni using molasses from the cane grown at Trinidad's Providence estate. So it's almost like kind of like the Mount Gay thing that they're doing now, which using specific molasses grown on their estate. So that is really interesting. And yeah, I would certainly fail to pick out the influence that would have in this because I've never had it on its own. But it's cool to be able to, like, I will say, it's only 3% Caroni. I get a little bit of it, and maybe this is because I saw that it's in there, but it's like a whisper of it as an accent, and it's enjoyable to me because I like that.
One of the things that was most pleasing is when you taste something like this, if you've ever tried to make your own infinity, bottle, sometimes they can just be a jumbled mess, not well integrated. Like, yeah, rare, yeah, it's inexpensive, but it tastes like crap. And I was really thankful that wasn't the case.
Yeah, we did one of our happy hours for patrons recently. We did a like bring your own blend thing, and it was just like, hey, pick out 2 or more rums from in your cabinet and make a little blend, and we'll see what everyone comes up with, and just see the crazy stuff. And I had never really done very much home blending.
Same.
And I tried to do it, and I was like, this is hard as shit to
Blending
get something
is
that's actually good. I was like,
is.
these Main Rum guys, these guys at Sheer, like they actually they really are talented. Like I think I'd taken it for granted.
There's a reason they're called master blenders.
Yeah.
It is 100% an art, and it's not an art. It took me 8 months of working just to come up with our heritage blend. And, that was when I knew the rums I wanted.
Yeah,
and it still took 8 months.
Right.
To put something like this together, Ian Smith really, that was like a lifetime of rum expertise in the making.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, when we had talked with, was it Karsten, Will, way back in the day, I think there was a mention of this, and they had talked about there was some times where they were just kind of, after a sample was done of something, they would dump it in, almost like it was like an invisible hand. Of just like, okay, well, this just goes into this barrel. And I knew that they had different barrels. So there must have been some method, you would think, with, which little sample went into which one. And maybe there was. That would be a great question to ask Ian Smith and maybe Ian Hoyles is, how did that come together? Or was it just merely chance? And in this case, to your point, Eric, the chance worked, like it's come together.
I would think, given their expertise and the provenance of the bottles going into the barrel, the fact that they were putting them into the barrel tells me that it wasn't a super nonchalant thing. Like maybe it was looked at as sort of a fun experiment, but I doubt they were just like, yeah, sure, like put whatever in there. Dump a little of this and a little of this.
They're not throwing a fifth of DOK in there, knowing that there's a bunch of Gardel and whatever else is in there.
Exactly. And I think, you can taste that, because I agree with what you said, Eric. I do think it's a balanced, evolving blend for me. And the Guyana component is the main thrust of it for sure. Like I think if I had to compare it to something, it kind of drinks a lot like some of the really old Demerara rums that I've tried over the years, which I love those kinds of rums. And you can pick up the accents from the other thing, obviously the Jamaica influence. Although because there is no, super, super high ester thing, you're not getting like crazy funk or anything like that. But there's a pleasant fruitiness that evolves. And I do get a little bit of the Trinidad as well. Those are kind of the three things. If I had to pick out like what really sticks out to me, those would be the three core elements of it.
It's surprisingly well balanced for the amount of cooks in the soup.
Right.
And like you said, you get hints of that Jamaica, but not overly funky. You get that agricole, but because it's so aged, you're not getting that, that floral grassy bite that you get from a young agricole. Mm-hmm. It's an almost 50-year-old agricole, which we don't see too many of in the United States.
Not too many. It's also interesting because I had forgotten I still had some of this, but when we did that episode with Karsten, which it was our second episode with Karsten, but our first one specifically talking about the Main Rum Company, and that's when he told us about the Infinity Casks, and this was 2 years ago. It was the first that I had heard about them, so I think it was right around the time that they were starting to share those with the high-profile bottlers of the world like yourself. And John and I were like toying with the idea of like, what if we emailed them and like, what if we tried to like put out one of these Infinity Casks? I wonder how much they cost. Just kind of naively toying around with this idea, and they were very kind enough to send us a sample of one of them, which is not the same as the one that you had, but this was I still had the sample bottle. Ooh. And I still had this much rum left in, so maybe like half an ounce or so. And so I was hoping I was going to do a little comparison as we do this. But when I tasted yours, I remembered what this one tastes like. And yours was like miles apart just in terms of like overall flavor profile, and even nosing this one now. And I believe, so they started this barrel it says February of 2007. And the Jamaica influence on this one is so much stronger, like definitely more on the funk spectrum. Doesn't smell quite as old to me. I'll dive into it more, but it was just interesting to me that it does appear that they took different approaches with these barrels. It doesn't seem just kind of like slapdash, just throwing stuff around, which makes sense when you think about it. Like these are extremely rare, cherished rums, and even though they're samples or whatever, they're still going to treat them with care. They're not just going to, create some sort of, I don't know, weird soup out of them.
No, they definitely know what they're doing. No doubt about it.
Yeah,
they've been doing
around
it too long.
Yeah. Eric, I wanted to ask you, usually when you read on the Holmes Cay bottle releases, it says best enjoyed neat or with a splash of water, right? Mm-hmm. Are you going to carry that through for this one, or is this one just neat?
Just does not, we did not touch it. It came out of the barrel at 58%, and that's exactly how we put it out. And if you want to have a rum and coke with it, be my guest. You bought it. You do whatever you want with it.
You do that, we can't be friends. I will say, though, interestingly, I did add a tiny bit, like a couple of drops to a little bit of the sample, and it did open it a little bit for me. It's really airy and got a real lightness to it, which I believe just comes with the long aging, that it rounds itself out. And you can clearly tell that it's potent, it's powerful, it packs a punch, but it's not sharp or hot either. So it clearly delivers here. And when I add a little bit of water, it does something. I haven't put my finger on it yet, but of the two of us, Eric, you may know this, but I'm not the Caroni fan. He's more of it than I am. So for some reason, when I added a tiny bit, it brought some other elements to me, because I was definitely picking up that slight. There's just like a hint of Caroni in there, and it takes on something more for me when I did that, which I wouldn't necessarily always suggest that. I'm a neat drinker for the most part, Eric, but I will say that adding a tiny bit of water to it wasn't bad.
You may be shocked to hear this, but this is the first rum I've never actually even tried that with yet. Normally, whenever we get a rum, we do tests at ABVs everywhere from like 45 up to 65 every couple along the way, just to see how it speaks differently at different ABVs. Right. And this one, I didn't even try it. I'm like, this is it. This is how it goes. So
right.
I'm going to go try it with a little bit of water.
You should. I mean, well, it makes sense with the perspective you were talking about earlier about that, you're just going to release it and it is what it is. But there's also the side benefit of, hey, you got a tiny bit more that you're going to get out of that bottle if you had a little bit of splash of water once in a while.
Yeah, if we brought it out at 40%, we
oh gosh, no!
Sold a lot more of it.
Oh man,
that's the Infinity and Coke version that we'll do another time.
I will say, I do think, I bet there probably is a delicious like 90 proof, 100 proof version of this. Not that I think you did the right thing releasing it at the proof you did, but it brings to mind like I've always said I think Samaroli does 90 proof exceedingly well, and I've had
Bristol as well.
Yeah. See, I'm less familiar with Bristol stuff just because they never make it over here in the U.S. Except I think they will be soon.
I heard that as well.
From what we have heard, yeah. So that is very exciting. But yeah, I think this was the right move to do it at cask strength. And
those of you that don't know, Bristol was one of the original rum bottlers out of the UK.
Yes.
But back then, when they started 20-something years ago, it was all 40 to 45% ABV because there wasn't really cask strength rums wasn't really a thing for the most part.
Yeah.
And that's the way John Barrett likes it.
Oh, we definitely know that. He's not shy about it.
Yeah, no, I loved, we both loved talking to John Barrett when he came on and wore his I like drinking lower proof rum right on his sleeve, did not apologize for it. And I respect that. Like this is I've made this point before, but like I like when bottlers have a point of view, right? Like
right.
Deliver me something that you have styled in a way that you think it's at its best. Give me your version of it, right? Have an opinion.
Nothing but respect for John Barrett. I mean, he was really one of the godfathers of all of us. He was one of the first guys really to do this, even before Luca, I think. So, but again, it was like, beating up on Dick McGuire for not getting a lot of 3-point shots because there was no 3-point shot in the 50s.
Right. You're playing in a different game now for sure. I just went back because I was curious about the Infinity sample that I was comparing it to that John and I received of one of the other 3 Infinity casks. This one first barreled in 2007, or first barreled in 2007, and I mentioned earlier, this one reads a lot more Jamaican to me, and I was curious to go back and look at the components, and it's not a massive difference in the ratios. The Guyana is still the biggest driver. It's 60% Guyana. It's 22% Jamaica, but when you look at what the Jamaica is, it's Long Pond, Hampden, and Clarendon as well, but the Hampden marks are C Diamond H, HLCF, and DHJ. I don't even know what is DHJ mark from Hampden. I'm gonna have to look that up. Maybe that's an old
Typo?
one.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Well, at any rate, we know that C Diamond H is
Diamond H Jamaica is what that is.
Oh,
so
Diamond H Jamaica. Diamond H. Okay, there we go. I knew Eric could get to the bottom of it.
So what you just hit on is why those rums exist. The Continental, you were supposed to ship that, so you blend it with for Schnit, and you only need a little bit of it to really make it taste like Jamaican rum.
Yeah.
So that's exactly why, 22% Jamaican rum, if a chunk of it is C Diamond H, is going to be a very heavy Jamaican rum forward rum.
Yep. Which I don't know like what the exact ratios of how much of the blend that was, but it definitely that the Hampden Diamond H and C Diamond H components, they're making their presence felt in this one.
That's the point of them. By the way, if you put all 3 Infinity casks together and snap your fingers.
Oh, damn it. You beat me to that one.
I knew you were waiting for that one.
I was. I had that one
Half
on
of
my
the world's
list.
rum disappears. Yes.
Oh, that was a good one. Excellent. So this is the best of time to follow that up. Basically, I did want to ask one other thing, Eric. So, if this release is as successful as you want it to be, do you plan on holding back 200 milliliters of this one? So, if there's a world where 20 years from now, the opportunity comes again to have another Infinity Cask release, and you would have this one reserved to call it Infinity times Infinity. Are you going to do that? You got to do that.
That's the Black Tot model. Where
Right,
they
just
keep
put a
some
little
of that
bit
original
more.
last consignment, and it's the starter rum. I don't know. I don't
That's a fair answer to that question.
I
As
don't know if
absurd.
we'll ever get the opportunity to find anything like this ever again. I
Well,
mean,
that's part of what I was going to ask as well. It sounds like going through this release was quite the ordeal, just in terms of packaging decisions and everything that went into it. And at the end of the day, you're doing it for a very small amount of product, right? So, I guess there's a part of this where it's like, it's just fucking cool as a rum fan to put out something like this, right? Like nothing like this has existed before. You can really nerd out over this release. It's like something that's cool to share with the world. But also, is it worth it to you, like putting all this energy into this bottle? Like, does it what do you see its role being in Holmes Cay? Do you just want to kind of do special way over the top stuff like this every now and then? Is that going to be an opportunistic thing, or are you going to look for the next Infinity Cask release? How do you think about that?
much like when we started the company, I had no idea the ordeal it was going to be to bring out 100 bottles of a luxury rum. Um, but while you're in the middle of it, oh my gosh, many sleepless nights over many different factors. I mean, everything was custom and separate between the book, where we had to, get the book, get the photos, have a book producer, have somebody lay out the book.
Right.
The special corks were custom. The special infinity medallion on the bottle was special and separate and custom. The label design, the 200 label design in the box, you have to pay a designer for each one of those components. And then the TTB approval, which was the easy part.
Wow,
But
if that was the easy part,
yeah,
then
the
the other
easiest
parts
part
must
was
have
the
really sucked.
TTB,
Yeah.
shockingly. We didn't think it was going to be this much of an ordeal. And had we just gone to one of those luxury packaging specialists in the beginning, it would not have been as much of an ordeal. But one, most of them didn't want to work with us for 100 bottles, and
Right.
two, it would have made it over $2,000 a bottle,
Wow.
which to me was, it was stretching it. But yeah, we did it because we're rum nerds and we want to bring cool stuff to the world.
Yeah.
And given the opportunity, we will do that. Um, Again, the guiding principle was, do I like it and can I get it? And if I can't, then we will put it out.
So now that you have it, it's very close to when this is actually going to be going out to people. I think the first question people have, at least people who are interested in getting it, is okay, there's 100 bottles of the box version. There's, how many did you say of the 200 milliliter? Like 60?
54 will be
50,
released.
54 of those. So that's 154 things. How am I going to get one of those? How do you decide which distributor, which states are going to get some of this? How do you kind of split that up and allocate it?
That's a great question also. As you would not surprise you, we allocate it to our best partners, our
Yeah.
best distributor partners and the best accounts within those partners. There have been retailers and bars who have been huge supporters of the brand, that buy everything we put out, that feature us on a cocktail menu or something. I mean, they get offered one of the 100 bottles if they want it. If they don't want it, we still love them.
I
We
hadn't
had
even
one.
thought about bars. That's a good point.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, there's some bars that will pour it out at cost just so everybody can experience it.
Right.
So I
And they
know
get
of
to
at
keep
least,
the bottle and the presentation on their top shelf after.
yeah, I know at least 2 or 3 bars that are going to be getting a bottle.
It would make a hell of a infinity bottle once you empty it. That could be your official at-home infinity do-it-yourself bottle. Just reuse the bottle for that, right?
Yeah.
Just don't refill it and resell it.
Meta infinity.
Yeah.
But it's sort of a thank you. We've had some partners that say, thank you so much, but we don't have customers that,
Right.
buy anything over $200.
Yeah.
And we don't want them sitting on shelves, and we don't want anybody to be unhappy. We want them to get to the people that have it. That said, I think we're going to offer a certain number on our website as well for a pre-sale. We'll do a code or something, and a certain day we'll say, okay, we're going to drop 20 bottles on our website as well.
Okay.
For people that don't live in one of those, 7 or 8 states that are going to get
Right.
a case or two.
Any idea when that's roughly happening?
Probably in the beginning of September.
Okay.
And will that be the box version and the 200 ml?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. That's cool.
Maybe we'll release 20 of each.
Nice.
We should just ask Taylor Swift how she's doing her tickets to her concerts, and then
If you got a
get some
connection
advice.
to her, why don't you just ask her if she wants a rum company?
the Swifty blend on its way. You
The
heard
Swifty
it here.
blend. Absolutely. I'm still waiting for Rihanna to start a rum.
I know. Yeah. I tried calling that shot and it hasn't happened yet. But when it does,
That's going to be the one.
yeah. Eric, any other things on the Holmes Cay or horizon that you're excited about right now?
Always. There's always things I'm excited about. We've got two boats on the way from Africa right now.
Ooh, I think I know what that's about.
One coming
okay.
from Reunion, one coming from South Africa.
Nice.
So I'm very excited. We needed to replenish our supply of Savannah agricole because that's sold out way quicker than we expected. There's a great quote about being in the music business is you get your whole life to make your first record and you get 6 months to make your second record.
That's right.
And we had our whole lives to release the Savannah agricole, and then it sold out way
Yeah.
quicker than we thought. And now it's taking us almost 8 or 9 months to get the replacement, the refresher. So,
And it's such a great
currently on a boat.
It's such a great summer rum too. If it could have made it here, a few months earlier, that would have been
know.
even better.
We thankfully have more of the Grand Arome, but the agricole with the whole kind of Persian Gulf situation, they send the boats
Yeah.
the long way around,
Right.
the far way around Africa up to France, and then from France to New York. So it's on a way.
So Mike had some MOBA samples that were unlike any other MOBA rums that I'd tried before. And one of which he did a very tell me what you think about this one. Or tell me if you know what was done to this. And I wasn't sure. But the rum had some quality to it that I really enjoyed. And I was like, yeah, this is cool. It was a lightly aged rum. It turned out what was special about the rum, and correct me if I get some of the details wrong, is that it was aged in a South African peated whiskey cask.
That's correct.
Is that the accurate way of describing it?
That's what it's called. SAWP is the mark.
That's what it was. Mike gave me the initials, and he was like, "What do you think SAWP stands for?" And I came up with some ridiculous thing, but I was nowhere close. But as soon as he told me that's what it was, it clicked because I was like, this kind of does have this smoky barbecue element to it, which didn't seem out of place to me for MOBA, because I've had some other MOBAs that have a little bit of that vibe to them, and a lot of their rums have savory elements anyway, so it didn't strike me as altogether that strange. And when I had it, after I learned that, I expected that information to immediately make me be like, actually, I hate this, because I've yet to find very many rums that have any kind of peated whiskey influence. And I like peated scotch, but I like it as peated scotch. I generally don't like that flavor added on or sprinkled onto a rum. But this one, it really came together and worked in a really cool way. And so we need the John Gulla test on this, because John has had very dire luck trying these types of rums. He has not found the one for him yet. And so, John, I know you like MOBA a lot.
I do love MOBA. Yeah.
I'm interested to see your reaction to the SAWP rum when it becomes available.
Can't wait till it gets here.
So
And,
100%,
pick it up.
I am of the Will school, and I have been on the record saying I would never release a peated rum. If I wanted a peat flavor, I would buy a peated whiskey and drink that instead.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were poking around Moba's warehouse on our trip over to South Africa, and he didn't tell us what WP was. He's like, "Try this, Robert," and all three of us were like, "Yeah, this is great." And he's like, "Yeah, it's a peated South African whiskey cask," and there were two of them. Great thing about Moba is every barrel is different. You know, he sent a sample once to me in the mail, and I'm like, "This is amazing. How many of those barrels can we get?" And he says, "That's the barrel."
One.
Yeah, that's it. And you go tasting in the warehouse, and every barrel is really distinct. And we chose 8 that we're gonna bring out over the next couple of years. The first 4 to 6 are gonna be here, hopefully by the end of the year. But he does amazing things. Temporarily set back. Their stills kind of, one of them blew up a couple of months ago, so he had
yikes.
to, the top just woo. So he's fixing that. But yeah, I mean, it's one of my favorite distilleries in the world, Mahoba.
Yeah, and
Wow.
you guys have some cool stuff coming from them. There's something to it. I kind of had a similar experience with a Alambique Serrano rum recently, which was their blend number 3 that they released called Mata Diablo, and I tried it before looking at the blend components because I had forgotten what was in there. I think like I'd heard when it came out, but I forgot what it was. And they have all these different blends with all these different cask types. And I tried the rum, and I was like, wow, this is really interesting. There's all kinds of stuff going on in here, and it's got this smoky quality to it that doesn't feel out of place. And I looked at the blend breakdown, and I think it was like 30 something percent. I may be off on the percentage, but some significant percentage of it spent 6 months in an ex-mezcal cask, which if I had seen that from like any rum producer outside of Mexico, or even if I had known that going into that, I think I would have gone into it like skeptical and like, oh, this feels kind of gimmicky and that sort of thing. But I think because it's a Mexican spirit, and when we talk to Jason from there, you know, they're getting casks that they can get their hands on that are nearby. So it's like they're using what's around them. It feels more like a natural thing as opposed to a forced thing. And I feel similarly about the South African peated whiskey cask, because it's like, they're using something locally. It's not like they're going all the way to Scotland to get one of these casks. It just feels kind of like this is here, so let's give it a shot. And I don't know, maybe only taste should matter to me at the end of the day, but those little, when you know that information about stuff, that influences me at least too. But so anyway,
what I'm hearing from you, Will, is just don't know anything about the rum you drink before you drink it, and you're gonna be happy.
Well, everyone has, everyone to a degree has these sort of unconscious biases, right? When they hear certain things, and when I hear peated whiskey or like agave spirit cask, I think the first place my brain goes is one of the big brands, because those big brands have done releases like that, and it's like, oh, they just pulled something off the wall because it's from a distillery that they also own or whatever, and they just wanted to do something different and wacky or whatever, and it just feels kind of gimmicky, whereas these feel like they came out of a natural thing. So I don't know. I don't know what point I'm trying to make, but try the SAWP when it comes out.
Yes, we have SAW, which is just the regular South African whiskey, and then the peated version. You can side by side them.
Oh, I guess it's SAPW. Have I been saying it wrong?
No, there's SAW and SAWP.
Okay. Whiskey peated. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
It's easier to say. You can just call it SOP.
Yeah. I was going to say, you're kind of bringing it back home for us, Will, unknowingly maybe, which is expectations, right? Expectations can really mess with you sometimes. And I have to feel like, Eric, for you, when you're releasing this Infinity Cask, people are going to have expectations of it, right? And I think that's what you have to kind of talk about, and hopefully what we've helped accomplish some of today is to contextually put it in what it deserves to be looked at, right? It's a piece of history. It's a unique something that will never come around again, and you've given it this beautiful package and presentation to go along with it to be a statement for forevermore, right?
Yeah, I would say so. Again, people are going to taste it and say, yeah, it's good, but it's not $1,500 good. And I'm okay with that because it's not, what is anything worth? It's worth, if you go into the raw materials of it, it's sugar cane and molasses and stuck in a barrel and aged for a bunch of years. But when you dip into the history of what it actually is and what it means, it's a special rum. So
I will say, I hope everyone who buys it does drink it, preferably sooner rather than later.
at least the 200s. If you sit on a 200 to collect, then
Yeah.
Don't let me find those people who are reselling it either. That
Yeah.
better not happen.
We don't want to hear about that.
Serious.
I mean, we say it better not happen, but there's going to be some of it. I mean, you can find more regular Holmes Cay releases on secondary markets, which of course there's more of those, but still.
Let's not let it not be anybody who hopefully listens this far into a rum podcast like this.
We would like to publicly pre-shame anybody who puts one of these on the secondary market. Yeah.
one question you may get, unfortunately, there's not enough of it to go over to Europe or Canada or elsewhere. Not even all states are getting it in the U.S., sadly.
I mean, I don't know if you really need to apologize for that because we've been getting that for years. Unfortunately, there's not enough to go over to the United States. Well, how do you like it, Europe? How do you like it? Taste your own medicine.
That's the reason we exist. I mean, we started the company because we couldn't get those European rums.
Exactly. I'm just kidding, by the way. I love all of our European listeners. We get great emails from them all the time. Please keep listening. It's all in good fun. Eric, before we wrap up, any final thoughts? Anything else to add that we didn't get to?
I just want to say, when I'm out and about in the world, you don't know how many times people come up to me and say, "Oh, I recognize your voice from the Rumcast."
Well, imagine how they're going to feel now that you've got the microphone.
Yeah.
Right. Now, though, but I won't sound like this in real life. I'll put on my radio voice next on the Rumcast.
They'll say, "I heard you on the rum podcast." Yes, you did. Oh, great.
Maggie Campbell of Mount Gay on the Rumcast tonight at 7.
We might need to get you to record a little standard introduction that we can run.
You're listening to the Rumcast.
Doing that voice, yeah.
Bumpers.
Yeah, bumpers, exactly.
Bumpers, exactly.
I knew there was a name for it. All right. Well, we'll put up some links to the Holmes Cay website, and this episode will be coming out pretty quickly before the end of August for sure. So you'll have an opportunity if you want to watch the site for when those bottles come on for sale. Keep an eye out for those. But Eric, as always, thanks for stopping by and filling us in on the backstory.
Thank you. If there's one thing I want to reiterate is, no way would this have been able to come looking as nice as it did without Maura, my
absolutely
partner and wife. She really was the one who made it look as special as it did. 100% of the credit.
She did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful.
Yeah. Now, I remember talking to both of you a few months ago, and I hadn't heard about the book, and Maura kind of showed it to us, and I could tell she had a lot of passion and enthusiasm that went into it, so it makes sense that she was the mastermind behind a lot of it.
100%. I found, or I got offered, a really cool rum, but she was the one who really made it a reality.
Yeah.
So I'm the guy who gets to get up and do the dog and pony and monkey show, but without her, it would not be nearly as cool as it is.
Shout out to Maura.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us, Eric. And
no rapid fire.
No, I guess no rapid fire. I don't know, John. Do you have anything just off the top of your head?
You don't get a rapid fire.
You took the Thanos one. I had that one.
Okay, that was one.
And
you
then
got 54 more seconds.
No, I mean, I was going to talk about the Infinity times the Infinity Cask, and I got that one out. The only other thing I can think of is, Eric, did you know that we're actually going to take pieces of this episode, the other 2 or 3 episodes that you were on, and we're going to stitch them together into an Infinity Eric Kaye episode?
That's a good sign out right there.
Excellent.
The Infinity episode.
Yes.
I'll give you one final rapid fire style question, which is, if you could isolate one of the rums in the Infinity rum,
that's pretty good,
and have that rum on its own, which one would it be?
1976 Gardel.
Man, he was right there with it.
I thought that would
be
the answer. I mean, that's my answer too.
It's older than me.
The 82 Gardel apparently was pretty spectacular, which is also in there.
We should have pointed out this rum has rums in it that are older than John. That's
Yeah.
hard to find these days.
That is
so.
tough to do nowadays.
I mean, that's really the only rums I've never experienced. Like, I've had really old Port Mourants, and I've had really old Iflots and old Guyana and Jamaica rums. I've never had a 50-year-old defunct distillery agricole before.
Yeah, it's too bad we don't have the technology to take a blend and isolate, pull out the individual rum components from it. But
the $6 million rum.
Main Rum Company is probably working on that as we speak. So
yeah, they are.
It's probably some cellar somewhere deep in Guadeloupe that it exists. It's got
definitely.
To.
Yeah, there's going to be
like an Indiana Jones episode, right? Or a movie waiting. It's like it's buried in a warehouse somewhere.
Yeah, that's the Main Rum Company is like that Indiana Jones warehouse.
Is it?
This nondescript building on the docks in Liverpool, and you take this rickety old elevator down 3 floors to like subterranean, and it's just lights go on as you walk through it's motion detectors. So it's dark, and all you can see is the distance is hundreds and hundreds of barrels stretching into infinity and beyond.
Oh, wow.
No
it's
Buzz
like where they
Lightyear
store
where
they store the Ark of the Covenant.
Infinity and Beyond. That would have been a good one. I can't believe I missed that. It was right
Yeah,
there for me.
But it really is like Indiana Jones, that place.
Oh man, that's it. Will, whenever we end up going to Main Rum Company at some point in our future, I'm bringing a fedora. Just so you know.
Oh God. Okay. All right.
And a whip.
Things are going to get weird. All right. I think that's a good note to sign off. So Eric's doing the wrap it up music. So there we go.
That's the theme song.
We'll do a little whip sound effect to go in there.
The theme song.
Throw me the rum. Throw me the whip. Throw me the rum.
Bye bye. That's a good one.
All
right.
Good.
Thank you guys. Always
Thank you
love
so
being
much.
on.
Absolutely.
Thank Maura for us as well. We appreciate you guys.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Rumcast. If you'd like to get more details about everything we discussed in this episode, we'll link to the Holmes Cay website. They've got a lot of specs for the Infinity Cask release on there, so you can check it out. If you'd like to watch this episode, see us in real time, see our faces, see Eric's face, the amazing expressions that we make throughout these episodes, you can find us at YouTube. We are the Rumcast on YouTube. Subscribe there. We'd really appreciate it. And as always, we'd love to hear from you. If you are planning to get a hold of this release, if you've already been able to taste it, we'd love to hear your thoughts, reactions. If you think it's worth the hype, we'd love to hear all of that. So send us an email at host@rumcast.com. That's HOST@rumcast.com. Or you can find us on social media. John, where can they find us?
We are at the Rumcast, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Threads, and posting our episodes where we upload them to those channels, and look for the feedback when it comes there. So, we're trying to interact always with all of those formats, and I see a lot of comments that do come, especially on Instagram. I think a lot of people really take to Instagram for whatever reason. That Zuckerberg guy,
it's the big one these
days. He knew what he was doing when he purchased that, huh? So yeah, get a hold of us anyway is good for you, and we would love to interact and talk about rum with you there. I tried to offer Eric and Maura $1,500 in Monopoly money for this release. It didn't work out.
Didn't work out for you?
No. I tried. But he wanted actual real dollars for it. So
that's too bad.
Yeah. It is what it is, But we'll see. Maybe in the future there will be an opportunity to buy. We'll see.
That's the only thing Monopoly's good for in your mind, right?
It's the paper money. That is terrible paper money, by the way. It is awful. Just awful. It blows everywhere while you're trying to play the game. It's just a bad idea.
There's a great story from when I was growing up. My dad and our family had a reputation for getting way too competitive and too passionate in playing board games.
Okay.
And before I was born, my parents lived in Germany. My dad was in the military, and they were stationed in Germany for 3 years. And there's this story of he and my mom playing Monopoly with some neighbors at the neighbor's house. And my dad went back to their house ostensibly to get some water, like a beer or something, I don't know. Okay. And while he was there, he went into their Monopoly game, took money from it to bring back to the other house. So essentially getting extra money. Yeah.
That is a new level of cheating.
A new level of cheating. Amazing.
Jeez.
So
I mean,
if you
Monopoly's
ever...
bad enough as it is because it takes forever. Now you're going to extend the game that way by cheating with other Monopoly money. It is a genius idea, though. We should both keep 2 copies of Monopoly handy just in case that you play one and you have one you can go steal money from.
Well, if you've ever wondered where my competitive streak comes during our annual fantasy rum drafts, which I'm 2-0 on, by the way, and we have the next one coming up. It's on our calendars for September 8th is when we will be recording that episode, so it will be releasing shortly after. We've already been going through the prep. We've got some different we're changing things up a little this year, so adding in some fresh little zags and unexpected twists and turns. I'm already training for
it. I'm running through the streets with my jogging suit on, running up steps. Yep.
I'm just figuring out what my auxiliary Monopoly money source is going to be for this year. I've got to find a competitive edge here to
You're always trying to be tricky with stuff.
I got to complete the 3-peat. The pressure's on.
You've done it twice already. You don't need to resort to tricks. Just come on, bring it. Just bring it straight.
It's a generational opportunity to be the first ever Rumcast 3-peat fantasy rum draft champion. So anyway, we've gone on long enough in this outro. Thank you all for listening, and we will be back with another fresh episode for you soon. Until then, cheers.
Cheers.